Good morning, Faith Church. Today we come to the greatest messianic chapter passage in the Old Testament. I'm looking forward to Jesus. It's Isaiah chapter 53. Actually, we'll start in 52, verse 13, through to the end of 53. And I think we're just going to read it today. It's an incredible passage. And just remember, this was written hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus came. And just look at the accuracy here, and it's just incredible to have this in our hands. God's prophecy, it was always his plan to send his son to save us, to save all mankind, and that would put their faith in him. And so that's what we will read today. Starting at verse 13, "Behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up, and shall be exalted. As many were astonished at you, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of the child of mankind. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which has not been told them they see, and that which they have not heard they understand." So this little thing, just an introduction here, that when Jesus came, his death on the cross was so gruesome. It's hard for us, and especially for the Jews back then, to understand how the Messiah could have been crucified and killed in such a way. But when he came back to life, and you look at all the prophecies and you see how it all comes together, what more can you say? It leaves us speechless, really. Chapter 53, "Who has believed what he has heard from us, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him." This is just speaking back to Jesus' birth. He was born in a stable, in a barn, to a poor Jewish family, and he wasn't born as a king in a palace. So it wasn't his birth didn't come with what people would think a king, how the King of Kings and Lord of Lords would be born. "He was despised and rejected by man, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not." And so that's kind of Jesus' ministry. Jesus was not accepted by the majority of people. He was rejected and made fun of and despised. And people didn't recognize him. Even with all the miracles and everything he did, they didn't recognize him for who he was. Verse 4, "Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions." His hands and feet were pierced by nails, right? "He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed." And that's just speaking of Jesus taking our sin on the cross. "And by his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one of us to his own way." That's our sin. We've all rebelled against God. We've all chosen to be our own gods, to say, "I want to do it my way instead of your way, God." And we're like sheep who have turned away from the shepherd. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. All that rebellion was laid on Jesus. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. That was Jesus during his trials, and that he never defended himself. He could have done miracles or called down 10,000 times 10,000 angels, but he didn't. He allowed himself to be arrested and falsely accused and killed. "Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. And they made his grave with the wicked, and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth." So here we see, talking about Jesus' death on the cross, by oppression and judgment he was taken away, led up to Calvary. He bore our transgressions on that cross, and then he died alongside criminals, even though he was innocent. He was buried in a rich man's, Nicodemus's, tomb, although he had done nothing wrong, and there was no deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring, he shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. It was always God's plan to redeem us through his Son. And there's nothing we could do. Nothing we could do. It would be enough to pay for our sin. And so it had to be Jesus. And out of the anguish of his soul, he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be counted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Jesus has made us righteous. He took the sin, everyone's sin, and gave us his righteousness. Took our sin and gave us his righteousness. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin of many, and makes intercession for the transgressors. Amen. And so this beautiful passage, all about Jesus, the one who would come to redeem not only Israel, but everyone right up to today, some 2,000 years later. And this is the message that we have to proclaim, that Jesus has come to bear our sin and give us his righteousness, that we can be with him someday. And so go in that knowledge, and may God bless you and keep you. And today would you have a peace knowing that Jesus has given you that salvation. God bless.